How's everybody doing? Glad to see everybody out. Hope we can learn a lot today. God's got some good lessons coming up. So we finished the book of Galatians, which we should have learned a lot from that. And now we're going to learn from animals in the Bible. So we'll have several lessons covering how God can use. He uses all of his creation, but he'll use animals. And the first of these lessons is consider the birds. So birds are used a lot in the Bible. On the fifth day of creation, that's when God created. He created the things in the sea, and then he created all the birds or fowls of the air. And he told them to go out and be fruitful and multiply. But what he said about them, he said it was good. So what he created was good. Think about all the beauty of birds. You've got the pink birds and the red birds, the blue ones. You know, he could have just made them all the same. They could all been brown. They'd still. But again, he has purposes, and even all the things, even the peacocks. A lot of it is for camouflage. A lot of it is, to attract their mates. But God has a purpose in everything He does, and we'll look at some of the ways that God uses birds. We got over 11,000 species of birds and over 300 references to birds in the Bible. So they get used a lot. Some of those things that happened. Noah sent out when the ark landed on the mount. He sent out first a raven, and after that he sent out a dove. 3 times. The third time the dove didn't return, which showed that the salvation from the flood was complete. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, they did some complaining, which they did a lot of complaining, which we've already pointed out. Don't complain to God. Be thankful to God. So here they just got out of the bondage of hundreds of years in Egypt, and they start complaining. They were hungry. They did not have bread. They didn't have meat. So God, on the night that He sent manna, He also sent them some quail. He said, "Here's some quail meat." So He took their complaining that time, but the next time they complained, then God provided them manna, gave them everything they needed. They had enough nutrition to keep them going for 40 years in the wilderness. The next time in Numbers that they complained about not having any meat, God sent quail again, but this time before they got done eating the quail, it came along with a plague. So it tells us don't be complaining to God, be thankful. You have enough, be thankful for it. If you don't think you have enough, be thankful for what you have. God will give you enough, and that's the lesson today, that God takes care of the birds, but so for sure He's going to take care of us humans. God sent a raven to feed Elijah during a famine. Here comes the dove at the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist. So there's lots of references, and then finally in Revelations there'll be a reference that God will call all the birds again. This time He's not telling them to multiply and be fruitful. He's telling them there's a feast to have, which is the Battle of Armageddon. Or after that, there's going to be lots of food to eat. So the birds will take care of that. So He can use anything for His purpose. So He'll use the birds to give us good lessons. I think next week He'll use a donkey to talk to us, so He can do anything. So everything God does is a miracle, but all the creation was a miracle. So we start out in Psalms 84, 1-4. It says, "How amiable are thy tabernacles, O Lord of hosts! My soul longeth, yea, even fainteth for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God. Yea, the sparrow hath found an house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young, even thine altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are they that dwell in the house, that they will still be still praising thee, Selah." So he's at the end there, he's talking about all the glory of coming to the house of God. The Israelites, we just talked about the law a lot in Galatians. One of the things that we didn't point out, that under the law, the Israelites could only go one place to get forgiveness of sin and do their sacrificing. They couldn't do it in their hometown. They had to go to Jerusalem, and 3 times a year all the men had to go to Jerusalem again for the feast. So it wasn't an easy task. So if you committed a sin, you were going to be waiting to get that sin relieved until you could come up with the money for your sacrifice and make the trip to Jerusalem. So it wasn't an easy task like we have today. We can go directly to God Himself, since that veil is rent, and get in His presence. And that's what This particular verse is about, so when the psalmist was writing, they would use this psalm as they traveled and made their journeys to the temple. So we're going to Jerusalem, and as they went along the way, they could be singing this song. But what the point was, how great it would be to be in God's presence because He is so great. So they were, they were longing to be in the house of God. That's how people should be today. But unfortunately, some people, they're like, how can I get out of going to church today? So we don't want to be that person. So if your heart's not right, it'll show itself. But again, people do get sick, and God will cure them and get them back in. And everybody we've been praying for, let's continue to pray for these people. That's because there's always sickness and things out there. But I'm not talking about sickness on this. There's people that if they can come up with any excuse, then they'll use it. Well, I don't have to go to church, but you should be on the other side of the coin. You should be, how quickly can I get to church? We don't have some extra church this week. What can I do? What can we do for God? So that we need to get our heart tuned to that. But so this was the tabernacle of the congregation. And later on it was when the temple was built. The Israelites had to travel to this one place to make their sacrifices and commune with the priest. The Holy of Holies, only the chief priest could go into that to commune with God once a year. So it was that special. But the people making the journey, the pilgrimage, they were looking to be at God's house. And they had some envy, or they just thought, here's the little birds, and these are small, what we'd call more insignificant birds, the sparrows and the swallows. Both of these are small birds. They're very busy birds. They don't sit down very long, so we can call them restless. There's a lot of restless people. They're busy and restless because they haven't found peace. But the psalmist is pointing out that these little birds, they can have so much peace, they can build their nest right there within the side of the altars, possibly even under the open altars or in the eaves of the courts. They could be right there in the house. And then at the last verse, they talk about blessed are they who dwell in the house. Again, the priest didn't actually live in the temple or even in the tabernacle before the temple was built, but they lived right next door. They had their plots. When it was the tabernacle, the Levites were just right outside, special place right outside the temple or the tabernacle, because they had to go in and serve God daily. And then when the actual temple was built, the same thing. They had their set areas that they'd be right there available for service. But again, that was just the priest that could do that then. But now everybody, we've got open access to get. I think you can go to church as much as you wanted to. You can find some church to go to and revival to go to. We can do a lot more than we're doing. So keep that in mind. We need to be, how can we do more for God, not how can we do less for God. But these little birds, they got to have their home there, and God didn't run them off. He won't run off these restless souls that come to Him. He'll let you find peace. So everybody can find peace if they're there at that altar. So that's what these two birds were referring to in this first verses. Anybody have any comments on those verses?
Brother Randy, I was thinking about when God created the heavens and the earth and the fullness thereof and the birds and everything. They were perfect in their setting at that time. All the beasts was perfect in its setting at that time. God said it was good. Shortly after that, after He created man violated God's word. And sin and death fell on all things at that time, even the birds. A little sparrow now, today, will go in another bird's house and destroy its young. A beast, a lion, a bear will destroy human life. All of that was lost in its natural settings at the time of man's sin. Look how far-reaching that was.
Yeah.
We find even in Revelation where it speaks of Babylon, the great, in its sinful ways. The Bible says it be destroyed in 1 hour, to become the cage of every hateful and unclean bird. Now that's not exactly referring to just the foul bird. You can refer to other things, but we do have unclean, clean, and unclean birds at this time because of man's sin. The only remedy, and we will go back one day to its purity, its original setting, as it was in the garden, is through Jesus Christ, the one that gave his life for full repentance and a complete born-again experience and a complete resetting of the whole earth one day. Amen.
Yeah.
Praise God.
So he is the only way, so that's the only cure, and that's what we, through the book of Galatians, that's what we kept, God kept saying, you know, it's only Jesus, he's the only way to salvation, there's no other way. So everything that the Judaizers were trying to throw in, some false teachings, and let's add something that Jesus is not enough, it didn't work. I'm going to throw in Hebrews chapter 11, which is the faith chapter, I'll read some verses. Verse 9 and 10, it says, "By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, which builder and maker is God." So Abraham, even back there when he was that man of faith, he wasn't looking, Jerusalem hadn't, that wasn't even a city that he knew about at that time, so he would look toward the tabernacle later, but he was really looking toward that city that man didn't build. So we talked about a couple of Sundays ago about the New Jerusalem, that part of heaven that God creates, and that city is built just by God. So Abraham was able to look ahead to that because he was a pilgrim. He was in a strange land. They were still living in tents. They didn't build a permanent house because his journey on earth, he knew wasn't his destination. And it goes down to verse 16, and it says, "But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city." So there's that city that Abraham by faith will get. And I'm throwing this in because of the temple and the corporate worship. God wanted the Israelites to get together and have corporate worship. He commands us today to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together, so he still wants people to get together because then they can worship him together, so they can pray together, they can fellowship together. But this is the goal of having that close body where everybody, the whole church loves each other, they all working, doing different things, but they're all working together, and it's that unity that God wants to get us to. So God is love, and he wants us to have that same love. So that's Abraham, he saw straight through to the end times, to that New Jerusalem that we'll see in Revelations coming down. But he had faith and he's waiting for it. He didn't see all his promises. He just took God at his word. God said this will happen, and he went and just believed it. He had to do some work after that. After he believed, God says, "Sacrifice your son." So then he had to get up. He got up early in the morning to go about what God told him to do. He didn't make an excuse. He didn't say, "Well, I think I'll be busy this week, but maybe I'll go do it next week." He got up early, first thing. He took off, went about what God said, and again, God took care of everything. Abraham knew that this is his promised son. If he dies, even Abraham knew that God would be able to raise him from the dead if that's what it took to keep the promise going. But he didn't try to tell God how to do his work. He just went about, "Hey, I'm just a little part of it. You say go, what do you do?" He went. So that's what we got to do. We got to be following God in all that he says. Next we move to Matthew 29, Matthew 10, 29 through 31. So Matthew 10 is the chapter where Jesus sends out his 12 disciples. By twos, he sends them out to the Israelites to preach the gospel. So, but when he sends them out, he doesn't say it's going to be, "Hey, this is going to be a piece of cake." He does. He starts out, he gives them power. They can cast out devils, they can heal. So he says, "Here's my power. It's going to be in you. You can do these things." But he says, "I'm going to send you out as sheep among wolves." That wouldn't, if you think about that, that wouldn't be what we would choose to be, right? We'd rather be a lion among wolves, right? Or something bigger, an elephant, something that we can defend ourselves. Sheep aren't very good at defending themselves. But what is this whole chapter, and again, we just catch the the meaning about the birds, but through this whole chapter, he's telling his followers that you're going to be persecuted for my name. You're going to be brought before governors. You're going to have problems, but he's telling them, don't worry. He's saying, don't worry what you'll speak, because I'm going to speak for you. The Holy Spirit's going to give you the words to speak. He tells them not to take extra money and clothes. He says, don't worry about that, because the workman is worthy of his meat. But the main point is that they've got to trust in God, and that's what, when we get to this section about the birds, we'll see how much God cares about the little things. So definitely He cares about humans, because God created everything, and He knew it was a great work, but His main focus was humans. He created humans just a little bit below the angels. Why? So He could have communion with them, so that He could love them and they would love Him back. So that's the kind of relationship that He's seeking. And we've already talked about He's given us all the tools to get to heaven and have that eternal relationship with Him, but we've got to get through this short earthly span first. It says, are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. So we got, again, a little bird that, again, it's part of God's creation, and it's pointed out here that one of these little birds won't fall to the ground without the Father. That's the Father knowing about it, taking notice of it, that it falls, and allowing it. So He's in all control of everything. So He takes note of that, and you'd think, well, He doesn't care if it's a little bird, that there's billions of birds and there's probably millions of sparrows. So what if something happens to one of them? We know that God takes note of it, and He starts out, He's saying that they're insignificant. So that you could buy two of them for a farthing, which is a Roman coin then, which would have represented about 1/16 of a day's pay for a common laborer. So it wasn't a lot of money. They don't have a lot of value to people. And I guess as far as, I don't know if anybody ever eats sparrows. I guess if they were hungry, they probably would, but you'd have to eat a lot of them to get full, probably, if you're going to go that route. But they don't have a lot of utility that we know of to people, but they have a lot of value to God. What about the hairs on your head? So we've all got still something here. I was going to say, when it talks about, and God does know how many hairs are on your head. So how many non-completely bald people in the world, how many people know how many hairs are on your own head? So that means God knows more about you than you know about yourself. So He knows. He takes note. So if you lose one, you don't have to just write it down, because He knows everything and can remember everything. But He's like, well, Lonnie did have, and I don't know how many hairs are on people's heads. He did have 10,208, now he's got 10,207 left, so he lost one. So, but the thing is, our hair is not really important, but our soul is what's really important. But if God's concerned enough to know about that little bird that drops, or one of your hairs that fall out, how much concerned is He about everything in your life? You think, well, I'm all by myself, God doesn't care. If you read the verses right there, how could anybody care more to know everything about you and take note of it? So He takes note of that little bird. He takes note when the hair falls out of your head. What about when you have a problem in life? Well, this is going on. So I'm sick. My family's sick. This family person needs to be saved. Is He concerned about that? He's very concerned about it. So that's what He's pointing out in these verses. Why is He concerned about it? Because He loves humans. So He loves people. He wants to have that relation. He wants people to be saved. He wants them to be in the family of God. He wants them to be in the church family. But ultimately, He wants them to be in that family together. So you talk about corporate worship. When you get to heaven, you're not going to, I can't think of any verse where it says, that one person's just over there by themselves praising God. It's, all the elders are together, and the angels, and sometimes it's 120,000 or all the believers, but there's a lot of corporate worship going on. So if you don't like church services being together, then you probably you may not like heaven, but more likely you probably won't get there to see if you like it. So let's again focus on that love and getting together and worshiping together. So that's what we should be doing. We should be worshiping together, praying together. I know we've talked about that, but we probably need to work on having some time to have an extra prayer time, or maybe extra prayer service to get together. The men can pray together, the women can pray in the back or front or whatever, but we need to have some prayer services. Why? Because we've already pointed out it's getting closer to the end. You know, times are waxing worse and worse, so we need more of God, not less. Prayer gets God's attention, and multiple prayers, you know, where 2 or 3 are joined together, gets his attention doubly or triply or however many people's there. So we can think about that and try to, again, do we have time for it? Yes. Does the devil say you got time for it? No, he'll say we're too busy. We can't do that because we're already doing too much. How many people did too much for God this week? So I didn't do enough for him, so we gotta, you know, invest our time, redeem our time, and use it wisely for God. So keep that one in mind. Any comments on the sparrows and their value and how God cares for his people, cares individually and collectively for us?
I don't have one on the sparrow, put that very well, but I heard a fellow say one time concerning the hare. I don't know how much he knew, but anyway, it always struck me kind of funny. He said, somebody said God knew every hair that you in your head that's coming. He said, we better have a good calculator the way mine's coming out.
Yeah.
So,
won't have as many to count some days.
yeah, but God does. He knows everyone.
So just think of the concern he has for us. And I don't know if I'm probably giving it to you as a memory verse, but I'll give it to you again. If you want to remember a verse, remember Romans 8:28. Does somebody can look it up and read it if they can't quote it. Romans 8:28. What does that verse say?
It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose.
So again, we may not understand all things, and we can't, but God, he's got the whole picture. He understands all things. So that will comfort you that when you say, well, things aren't going my way, well, hey, there comes some good folks rolling right in there. Glad to see them. Yeah, been missing. Here they come, coming right on in. Yeah, so thank God for his blessings. Amen. So he even knows how many hairs William's got on his head.
Yeah.
He's got that counted. So, but God's blessings, you know, that's right there in that verse. We know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them who are the called according to his purpose. So you can't get any more blessing than that or any more care. William's he's just moving right along. We're glad to see it. We've been missing them both, so glad to have them back. Our next verse we get to will be on eagle's wings. So we know a lot about eagles in the Bible, and God uses a lot of references to eagles. Eagles are, I guess, one of the most powerful, the biggest birds. They have a wingspan of between 6 to 8 feet, so they're huge birds. They can lift a third to half of their weight and carry it. So and when you think about small birds like chickens, a mother chicken doesn't want you picking up her little babies. My grandkids figure that out sometimes, that she'll get after, you know, even them, but you definitely don't want to go up to an eagle nest and reach in there and try to pull out a baby, because you may not come out with your hand. It wouldn't. So I'm definitely not going to try that. There's an eagle nest in Cumberland County that you can see from 90, and the eagle bald eagle sitting up there on both of them with their babies. But yeah, I wouldn't. You definitely don't want to mess with the mother eagle or even the daddy eagle. It seems like both of them, and the bald eagles. The eagles that were in Israel they were golden eagles. They're almost the same size as bald eagles, but they have that same care for their babies. And we'll get into this and we'll read it. Exodus 19:3-5. It says, and Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. So God again chooses, his people. He would like to choose everybody to get saved, but we're on that choice side. He's already done all the work, given us the gift. All we got to do is go along and pick it up. Again, not by works, but by faith, we'll get saved. Here's the Israelites. They got salvation. They were bound and slaves in Egypt. They were getting, cruel treatment. But God, he brought them out, and he says he brings them out. He brings them to himself. So he brought them first into the wilderness, but the goal was 2 steps. He was really aiming for the promised land. That's what they were looking for. He promised Abraham, I'm going to put you in this land. But we just saw that Abraham saw right through the land that he wasn't looking for wasn't actually Canaan. He knew that was promised to him, but he was really looking all the way to heaven. He was looking for that city that God built himself. But he understood the promise by faith. But God, we know that. So we know the size of eagles. We know their strength. We know how they protect their young. But so they, just like an eagle, he swooped right in and pulled them out of bondage. Gave them salvation from the Egyptians. He ended up wiping out the Egyptian army in the Red Sea. So we know the miracles that he did. But he points out to them, not only am I protecting you like that eagle, that again, the mother eagle, I think all birds will do that, but the eagle would for sure do it because their nest, they don't build it in a tree, usually in a tree. If they did, it'd be in the very top of it, but their nest is almost always exposed. It's sitting, the one in Cumberland County is right up on top of a telephone pole. But they like to put them up on cliffs, and they usually are completely, uncovered from the elements, but their little baby eaglets don't get rained on. They don't get killed by the cold because the parents right there spreading their wings over them, watching over them. They'll keep the cold rain off. They'll definitely keep any predators away. I don't think there's many birds that's going to fly up that high. If they did, they're not going to tackle the eagle. And if any predator else could get close, the eagle would probably just pick it up and eat it and say, well, here, God brought me some food for my babies. So you don't want to mess with the eagle. And then God's pointing out that's the kind of provision he has for his chosen people. And he tells them that they'd be a peculiar treasure, because again, he has all the earth. He wants everybody to be saved. But when this was written, again, the Israelites were God's chosen people. Before we got to the New Testament and the New Covenant, where we talked about that now we all get to be taken in as God's children, co-heirs with Christ himself. We covered that in Galatians. But at this point, God's chosen the Israelites. He calls them a peculiar treasure. So what is peculiar? It's different. People say, well, the Israelites messed up because they wanted a king. Why? So they could we want to be just like all the other nations. What did it get when they turned against God, relying solely on him for everything they needed? Well, let's have a king. Why? Because we don't want to be different. We want to be like all other nations. People want to do that today. They want to be, I do want to be a Christian. I want to go to church, but I don't want to be too close to God, or I don't want people to be able to tell, go to Walmart, I don't want them to be able to tell that I might be one of those Christian people, so I want to be just like the world. If you want to be just like the world, that's probably what you'll be. But that's not what God's looking for. He's looking for somebody to be holy and different, and that's what he was pointing out with his chosen people. And we'll go ahead and put Deuteronomy 32:10 in there also. It says, he found him in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness. He led him about, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over the young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. So the last point, he says, strange gods, again, have no purposes. Idols in your life have no purposes. They're not going to help you. They would hinder you, but everything that happens is because God is there doing it for us. So again, don't have pride. Don't think that you can do anything of yourself, if you think you can do anything of yourself, you're not gonna succeed. You gotta get to that point that, I'm nothing, so you can be meek, but I need God, because God is everything, and that's where we wanna get to. The Israelites, they finally got to that point, but again, they had pride, and they did wrong things. They kept serving idols, they kept messing up, but God didn't give up on them. He kept going back to them. And we've already said now that, the Jewish people in general rejected and crucified Christ, but some of them still get saved. Some of them got saved then. Guess what? Paul, that we just talked about, this greatest writer, in the New Testament, he was one of them. The 12 disciples, again, all these were Jewish people. So some Jewish people got saved, and God will, at the end times, he will circle back to the Jewish people, and there will a lot of them still be saved. But at this point, the nation in general, they've rejected Jesus. They crucified him, and they didn't want to follow Jesus. So there's the devil just saying, well, don't do it. And then after they crucified him, they're saying, now we can't admit that we did wrong, because hey, we just killed the Messiah. So then they're still reluctant. We can't admit that we killed the Messiah, so we still got to be waiting for him. But they will meet him one day. Everybody will meet him one day. So that's the point there. But we need to be that special people to God, and he's going to watch over us just like that mother eagle. One thing it talks about the eagle stirring up the nest and fluttering over her young. So what eagles do, after it's time for the eagles to fly, God's already told that mother eagle this is the time. So when she builds the nest, there's the daddy eagle he's helping too. They collect moss and they collect soft leaves and they put feathers in there. So they make them with sticks. They're almost all made out of just rough, hard sticks, but they try to line the inside so the little babies with the eggs first will be comfortable, and then the little babies will be comfortable. But they don't leave them comfortable. As it gets almost time to fly, they start bringing them less food, and when they bring food, they drop it right on the edge of the nest, so they get them over to the side. And then that next step, the mother gets over the nest. She flutters her wings, and that does two things. It teaches the babies they can watch, well, this is maybe how you fly, but also that's blowing all the feathers and the leaves out of the nest. So now it's just down to hard sticks, and these eagles, they'll even get in there, and so the sticks laying down, they'll rough them up, and you get one sticking up, and some eagles have even been known to pretty well tear the whole nest down. If the babies won't get out, they'll have to remove the nest around them. So take those barriers out. What does that suggest? It suggests that God doesn't want us to be complacent. If that little eagle stays in the nest, even though it's being fed and it's ready to fly, but it doesn't know it can fly yet, it would just stay there and die if something doesn't happen. So God has to get her attention, take her bed of comfort away sometime. So don't make him have to shake his feathers too much towards you. Don't make him ruffle up the things too much, because he will get people's attention. He'll do it as the Spirit's drawing them to be saved. He can do it the easy way, or he can do it the hard way. After you're saved, the same thing. Is the child going to be obedient? The parent probably won't come out with the big paddle the first thing, but they're going to try to reason with the kid, give him some time out, and try to do it the easy way, but the hard way, is always out there as the option. If you don't listen, I've told you twice, or I've told you 3 times, and there's going to be, some results. God will have those results, but let's go with the easy way. Let's be his peculiar treasured sons and daughters and live that way and love him, and we can avoid some of that judgment and punishment, because it will happen at the end. We may think, well, we're getting by with it on earth, things are going pretty good, but we know there will be that final judgment where we'll have to pay the price, but we'll hear those good words, well done, or we're going to hear the bad words, I never knew you. But just think of the love that Mother Eagle has for the babies, and some bird watchers, especially for bald eagles, I know they'll say, well, eagles would never swoop down and catch their babies or never carry them on their wings, but, I've read the stories that, you know, even currently that it still happens, and I'm sure the bird watchers today, you know, they don't know what God was doing thousands of years ago, when these eagles were swooping down and catching their babies, but I can assure you, even though it is a great metaphor, how, you know, God watches over and takes care of his people, you know, the eagles did exactly what God says, and that they can swoop down and save their babies, and God, he saves us from things that we don't even see. Don't wait till you're about to hit the bottom, we'll say that, don't wait till you're about to hit the rocks at the bottom to call out for God. You know, he will be right there, you know, if that eagle is gonna save the baby, it can't sit up on the nest and wait until, baby's about to hit the ground, it's gonna be right there close, you know, able to be available to swoop in and soften the landing or catch the little eaglet, but that's how God is, but, we wanna make sure that we're close to him. If you're not close enough, you know, you might hit the rock before you get the prayer answered, so, there it is again, we gotta be praying more, so we're gonna put that in focus. The more we pray, the closer we're gonna get to God. We can't be too close to God, but that's where we need to be. So close to God that not only gonna be his treasured possession, but, you're not gonna wanna disappoint him, you're not gonna wanna make him sad. So we don't wanna fight with the mother eagle or the daddy eagle. We wanna be loved by and comforted and watched over. The other thing that eagle does, we'll get on the others tonight, but think about all the shade. If it wasn't for that eagle there, you know, giving shade to those little babies, you know, they'd be right there getting cooked in the sun. So they're also giving that shade. So be close enough to God that he can shade you from the eagles, help you get through those things. So have a great one.